Hey, what's going on, you guys? Xavier here, the Traffic Link. In today's episode, we're going to be having a discussion with Justin Ranton, who is a speaker, coach, mentor, UX UI, senior UX UI designer who brings a plethora of experience to the table. We talk about his early experiences starting out in design in the early 2000s, which, as you know, that was the dot-com boom, or just after the dot-com boom. So he's bringing a lot of that conversation to the table. We talk about what content converts and what makes content aesthetically pleasing that moves people to action. We also talk about why it is important to have well-designed creative and the golden ratio, which I compare to be the castor oil of your sales and marketing systems. And we talk about how to take that curiosity and turn it into credit card swipes. This is one of those episodes you're not going to want to miss. I'm sure this is going to go down as one of my favorites all time. All right, without any further ado, let's get into it. All right, so really quick, you guys, I'm here with Justin. Justin is the owner, founder of BlkHol Design. Tell me if that's right or wrong. See, I have this thing called process abandonment, and Justin is the epitome of process abandonment. And I had a form for him to fill out to be on the podcast, and he goes, "The form's too long. Just ask me in question. And ask me in person. Ask the questions in person when we meet." So I went back and looked at the form that I asked him to fill it out. It would have been perfect for him to fill it out in advance, but we're not going to do that. You got it. Everybody has that one kid in class that they're just like, "Come on, bro." And Justin is that kid for me, but he does bring a plethora of experience, background. We both come out of the design background. I'm super excited about what we're going to get into today. We had the great pleasure of getting in on his platform yesterday in his Discord and talking to some of his community. And we just automatically was like a preview to what's going to happen today. Super excited about that. Looking forward to getting into things. Just real quick to handle some dude gadget type stuff. I'm really excited about today simply because I'm recording everything off of I'm using my Osmo Pocket 3, which is the newest tech that came out for the creators that are out there. The new handheld gimbalized 4K camera that shoots 3K in native vertical or 9:16 aspect. Super excited about that. Running the microphone here as my main source of audio, and so I'm just geeking out on that. So you're gonna see me try some new things, but I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Justin and let him get his piece in and talk to us about it. Just real quick, when we were talking just before I hit record, recapping about the energy that we had in the room yesterday. And one of the things I'm really excited about is hearing his input. I have a very specific niche I feel, and the marketing and digital marketing space and how I go about things. And Justin is just like right on the right. I won't even say the tail end. I'm following behind him because Justin is the one that makes it pretty, right? I'm the man that makes it function, right? And I know that he understands what I do. I understand what he does. And I'm just really excited about hearing him come with some juice, come with some heat. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Justin. If there's anything I missed in your introduction, please don't hesitate to fill in. And there's so many things I want to talk about. We're going to talk about because we have a lot of commonalities and things that I find to be really happy places for me. He's involved with on a day-to-day basis. So Justin, go ahead and give us the rundown.
Thanks, Xavier. Appreciate it, my man. Yeah, so I think you did a really good job getting it off to the start. Some background information is always helpful, so maybe I can provide a little of that just to help folks kind of know who I am and where I come from. So I've been in the design field for about 20 years, much like Xavier. I got my start back in the late 90s with Photoshop 5, designing web banners. I'm pretty sure it was don't come after me, Adobe, but I'm pretty sure it was a pirated version of Photoshop 5 that was getting passed around my high school way back when. So, um,
Everybody had the pirate version.
right. So, but hey, like that's how I got started, right? I mean, that gave me, once I got that, then it was like I was playing with Photoshop all the time, and I just fell in love with the idea of design and graphic design and the whole nine yards. And so I did that in high school for the yearbook, and I did the graduation announcements for the school, and it was a whole thing, and it just kind of became a part of my identity was doing design. I was having a really cool conversation with my mom the other day, and I found, and this is so weird, but I found out that my great grandfather painted billboards back in the 1800s. So
Wow.
advertising is in my DNA. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
had no idea until just recently. And I remember, hearing something about, oh, my mom always said things like, oh, art's in your background, art's in our family, and we had painters like, and stuff in our family, but I never really thought about it. So anyway, yeah, it's a part of who I am. And then I started in the probably around 2012, I started learning web design and front end development. And that's really where my career kind of transitioned from just being a visual and graphic designer into web design, user experience, user interface design. And for the last 11 years now, that's pretty much all I've been doing. And I've been working at some of the largest companies in the nation. I've worked for Facebook, Bayer, Monsanto, Becton Dickinson, a big medical device company. I've designed software for them. And all that stuff has been like the UX UI portion, and I've built and scaled global teams to do that work. So it's been a fun journey getting there. But this year, I decided that I'm going to start working for myself. Actually, November of last year, November 2023, I just said, hey, it's time for me to start my own thing. And I just put my chips in, and here we are. So it's been fun, crazy, like 5 weeks now. I've had a few new clients, which is awesome. Working and helping and build up my business. I'm scared as shit to be doing my own business because I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm learning, and folks like you, Xavier, and some of the other mentors that we have in our networking groups and things like that. And that's why the community thing is so important to me, because I'm learning from the other people in my community what to do, what not to do, how to think about things a little bit differently, how to ask questions differently from a business standpoint, which is telling me internally I can take that information and use it to make decisions for myself and how I want to approach different things and how to approach different people. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, and you said a few things that I resonate with too. So in my lineage is a huge, we have a huge art uh like how art lineage going back to my great grandmother being a artist and she used to paint dolls, right? And so
That's
I heard the
awesome.
same thing about art's in your blood, it's in your past. So it's the same with music. Fifth generation musician, I play the bass. My dad was a guitar player. He played all around the
You
world.
play bass.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have so much shit in common. Look at this right here. Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Oh,
my
yeah.
mark.
Oh, you got your Mark bass?
That's my
Yeah.
mark bass back there. It's my
Yeah.
210. I've got an Ampeg 15 sitting below.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
My
You run a
bass.
Mark bass and Ampeg?
Yeah, and my that's my Ibanez 5 string right there.
Okay. Yeah. 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 My bass is downstairs. I generally keep it downstairs because it's a little more temperature controlled. But
Uh-huh.
my dad has a custom made. He had a custom made alembic with LED frets.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a pretty expensive piece of equipment
I believe it.
when he bought it, and I think it has appreciated in value since then because of the quality of the wood and things like that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
a piece of jewelry really that he used to take on tour and play. And he passed away in 2020, November 2020, and that was like the first thing I gravitated to and held on to. So when after I came back to his house after they announced he passed and everything, so but yeah, we have a lot of things. I'm telling you, we have a lot of things in common. I know that you from the Dallas area. I lived in Dallas for like 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
To this date, I have a 817 phone number because I lived in
817.
Arlington. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, we have a lot of things in common, and that's what I'm really excited about. talking more in depth about today. I know that you come from professionally, you come from the design aspect. You've built software, so you know the difference between form and function, and the constant fight between form and function, and
Yeah.
how they need to operate. I took that over time, and I started to wrestle with that. Which one's more important, form or function? Before, when I was younger, it was form because everything had to be pretty. But then when I started really realizing that pretty doesn't make money, I realized that function is probably where it needs to be, right? Like pretty can get you so far, but you need systems. You need things that are actually going to work in the background. So tell me a little bit about um, you can taking that into consideration. Like in the software world, they say, "What's the business logic behind this?" Right? They say, "What's the business logic for behind it versus the functional or the programming logic?" Right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your history designing and balancing that form and function, because an ugly form isn't going to attract as many people, but a pretty form with no function isn't going to convert many people, right? So there's like this constant like ebb and flow between form and function, and I can think that we want to talk more about that, like form and function and how they work, because in my world it's funnels, it's automated emails, automated text messaging,
Right.
attribution, metrics, and then making incremental changes to get more people in a data set to convert, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I also know that none of that happens if I have an ugly landing page, right? So tell me a little bit about how in your career you've managed that like form and function, and
Yeah.
how that
Yeah.
plays out.
It's a really good question to kind of start with. It's super in the weeds though, because for me, it has a lot to do. Okay, so in my field, in the user experience field, we have a saying, and it depends, right? And I think that applies to so many things, but it's kind of the mantra of user experience. I'm not a huge fan of that because I think when you start boiling things down scientifically, using the scientific method to get to what you're trying to achieve, there's a solution. But I say all that to say aesthetics impact the perceived usability and the perceived ease of use of a product. So the better it looks, the higher perceived value, the higher perceived functionality, the higher perceived usability of something. And so that's really the balance that we're trying to strike is at a certain point, our perceived ease of use or our perceived functionality or perceived value is going to kind of plateau and taper off. That's in the business world, that's how far we need to take aesthetics into the design process when you're building something like software or an application. Now there's a lot of things that are going to play into constraining how far you can actually take that, right? Because timeline, when you're working in a big corporate business, timeline is always the key. As coming from NASDAQ or wherever you've been before, you've got to deliver. And what are they always asking? When's it ready? When's it ready? When's it ready? So you have to figure out how much time to spend on different things in order to execute within your timeline. If you're on an agile development plan or something like that, which is, you know, um, it can be really challenging. So the other thing on my side of the work, from a user experience side, and I work with a lot of engineers and a lot of developers. For me, I'm always the advocate for the end user. I'm always asking, what's it serving for the end user, right? And sometimes that can become imbalanced from my position where I feel more strongly about how somebody is going to perceive the product, the experience they're going to have with it. And so I'm always trying to advocate for more and more and more of that into our design or into whatever it is that we're building. If I'm not advocating and pushing and asking for those things and suggesting them, they're not going to make it in, and you're going to have an engineered designed product, which isn't always a bad thing,
Mhm.
but it's not always as good as it could be, right? If you don't have somebody thinking about that part of the product. So I think there's a balance that has to be struck, and I think that it's not form over function or function over form. I think it's um, function supported by form, right? I'm going to say function first because function equals results, which
Mhm.
equals revenue, which the whole
Mhm.
reason anybody's in business is to generate revenue. I don't care how
Exactly.
you slice it, revenue is king, right? So if your product or your service or whatever you're doing is not generating revenue, it doesn't matter how good it looks, right? And I think that's the point you're driving to. If it's not
Right.
generating anything, there's something wrong, right? So
Exactly.
then you have to reverse engineer and find out what's wrong with it. So what I try to teach the people that I mentor, I do a lot of mentorship for designers and user experience people, um, businesses. I've been doing this with some of my clients, trying to mentor them as well, and trying to understand how they communicate what they're trying to accomplish in terms of ROI, but specifically how do they connect it to revenue, right? So can we connect aesthetics to revenue? Of course we can, but it's really hard. It's a very intangible thing, and you have to have really clear metrics and goals set for not the business, but for the people using the product, right? So when we think in terms of aesthetics and function and how they combine together, for me, it equates into 5 areas. You already touched on one, which is adoption. The other
Right.
ones are happiness or sentiment, right? How likely am I going to refer it to a friend or a colleague via net promoter score question, customer satisfaction, sentiment analysis. How easy is it to use? System usability scale is part of that sentiment analysis because we're talking about a perceived value, a perceived ease of use, right? The others are engagement. So if something looks attractive, if it aligns with what I think is good and aesthetically pleasing, when something looks better, if I automatically assume it's going to work better, right? Apple's a great example of this. And the reality is, I've got my Apple mouse over here that I don't ever use because it's dead and I can't use it when it's plugged in because of the little thing, right? So that's a form over function problem right there.
Right.
So the other area is retention, and the last one is task completion, which is probably the most important in my
Yes.
opinion. I think they're all equally important to some degree, but if a person can't complete the tasks, they're not going to use the product, they're not going to adopt it, they're going to be upset. It's all going to affect everything above it when we think in terms of sentiment, engagement, adoption, retention. And
Right.
so what I'm trying to get folks to understand is set a list of tasks you want to accomplish. You can do this with a logo, you can do this with a piece of marketing collateral that you're trying to put out, and you say, okay, what do I want my users to be able to do with this thing? And ask them to do it. And if they can, great. It's got good task completion. Then you can kind of move on. Now, I'm giving you the 30,000 foot. There's a ton of little nuances, ways to
Exactly.
approach this,
Right.
research and all that stuff. But that's how I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like for people to like get a good idea to and look at it because in my career, in my time doing graphic design, there's always those things that people overlook because they don't understand or appreciate or don't understand the underpinnings of what makes
Right.
anything good. Right. We are we are you brought up Apple, we are all uh either helped or harmed, and depending on how you look at it, by the simplicity that the iPhone and all the Apple products have brought to them. But there's so much research and development behind those things that make them function the way that they do. And there's a lot of research that goes into it to where we take for granted the good design. We take for granted the considerations that went into making that thing a thing. Um, and we just look at it and goes, oh, it works. So everything I'm going to put together is just going to work, and that's not necessarily the
Right.
truth
Right.
or the way it really breaks down. It doesn't always just work. So you trying to take the same approach or trying to duplicate something that you see that's out there may not necessarily get you the same result, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and understanding that, and I know that people take that for granted all the time. So when you start talking about these are the major building blocks of decisions that are made, hopefully somebody out there starts to understand that, oh, this actually functions or works or is revenue producing because there are some greater considerations that went into it. And that's one thing I try to implement and try to illustrate even to people
Yeah.
that I work with. Like, I know you think, oh, I just want to get a website so I can go make products. I get it. Like, that's what it looks like. But let's take a moment and step back and actually analyze all that it's going to take to get the result that you're looking for.
Yeah.
You know, people color. like you talk about aesthetics alone, right? Talk about the task. How long does it how long and then how long does it, or what's the completion rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I call like process abandonment. Like you have a process that you want your users to go through so that they can qualify themselves to get to
Right.
an end result,
Yep.
right? But if your aesthetics don't help them get there, right, then its chances are you're gonna see a lot of churn, a lot of process abandonment, people not completing the thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's really good. Now, what I wanted to talk about next is like how do you, when you're constructing an offer, or when you're constructing a new product, or you say somebody wants to build a digital product, right? They want to build something simple, even
Mm-hmm.
if something simple as a lead magnet, or a free giveaway, a PDF of something.
Right.
Um, like what are things that they could implement? One of the things I've been really mowing around in my head lately is the golden ratio, right?
Mm.
And understanding how the golden ratio plays into so many things that we just automatically go, oh, that looks good. And we don't understand the psychology behind what made that thing look good or not.
Right.
But as designers, developers, we understand that if they think these things are not laid out in a way that's easily that lines up with nature or the way we naturally perceive things, we can lose people. So
Yep.
we're gonna hit this for a few minutes, and we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna come back into it. But I wanted to put that out there, like some quick things, some actionable things that people can take away from when they're looking at, okay, I want to design this a product. It's the beginning of the year. I've always wanted to do this thing. How do I come up with a product or design a product that's going to be aesthetically pleasing and it's going to draw people in? It
Yep.
could be just even with content. And I know that golden ratio has a lot to do with that. But it's been years since I've been in the UX UI side of things, years.
Yep.
So
Yep.
and then just in design things, in the design side of things, even longer. So I'm gonna give it to you for a few minutes, and then
Sure. Yeah. So I think this is kind of a tricky question to answer, honestly, because if you don't understand who your target audience is, it's almost impossible to design for them. And I think the first step that everybody has to start with is knowing who they're putting the content for. Like, who's the digital product for? Who's the funnel for? Who's the onboarding for? The answer cannot be everyone, because if you try to serve everyone, your design will look like Facebook, which I'm not knocking Facebook's design. I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff. There's things for everyone. It's very cluttered. It's not a streamlined experience. And there's so much stuff that they have to hide things from you, right? So you don't know where things are sometimes. Menus are cascaded. So that's the example I'm giving, is just simply that when you understand something simple like who your end user is, the process that your person needs to complete, that your customer, your end user needs to complete, and you know exactly who that person is, then you understand what you need to do in order to get them to kind of follow the pathway. So how I would approach something like that, I've got a piece of marketing collateral in front of me, but I don't want to put that person on blast. Let's see if I can find an example here. Actually, I'm going to pull up an ad just so I can think. I'm very
for
visual
those
thinker.
guys that are listening on the audio side of things, you want to tap in now for the non-audio portion. You want to go ahead and
I don't want to share anything, so I don't
yeah.
want to put anybody on blast here. I'm using it as a frame of reference for how I might make a decision. I just need to kind of visually see something. So basically, when you think in turn, let's use something simple like a funnel, right? Not a piece of digital software, because there's a lot of things that go into that, but a funnel, for example. And your goal with a funnel is to help a person make a decision multiple times, which is going to ultimately lead them to a conversion. I want to buy from you, right? That's what we're talking about. So if I have a customer who is trying to buy my marketing product, like let's say I'm selling some kind of marketing product, like let's just use SEO as the example today. I'm selling SEO to you. And if I'm trying to design a funnel or a flow or an onboarding process for that person, I need to understand why SEO, first of all, is important to them. What are they going to do with it? Why do they think they need it? And once they make that first kind of understanding of why it's good for them, then the next thing is going to lead them into how much of this do I need potentially, or what volume, or what's it worth to me, maybe is a question that we want to ask next. So I think what I'm getting at is there's a flow. You used this word a lot the other day. There's a flow in kind of the process. And I think that's right. So break your flow down into very simple, straightforward steps. And to put you on blast, the reason I didn't want to fill out your form was because it was overwhelming.
So you're gonna put me on blast about my form for the podcast.
Yeah. It's all good, man. And so if you take those big long forms and break them into smaller chunks, personal information, ask me 3 or 4 questions, business information, ask me 3 or 4 questions, and we break it into small bite-sized pieces, and then you give me a you give me a step process, like an indicator. We call it a stepper in a UI, like from a component perspective. Then I have a better understanding of what my commitment is, right? And there's this really cool book by a guy named Nir Eyal called Hooked, Hooked, Hooked. And he talks about something that he calls the hooked model. And it's really understanding like that there's something that creates a trigger, there's an action, there's an investment, and there's a reward, right? And I may have some of those out of order. So definitely just pick up the book for yourself. But basically, what it's telling me is in order for me to give you some level of information, I'm investing and I need to get a reward back for my time. Everybody needs that. Like in every flow, every function, every onboarding step, it's all about re-incentivizing the person to continue to do more and more and give you more and more information. Voluntary disclosure is something that when we talk, what voluntary disclosure is, people willing to give you their information, right, when you ask for it. Or if you put a form and there's all the fields are optional, you want them to fill that stuff out, that's voluntary disclosure, right? They're just saying, hey, I'm going to give you my information. And so what I'm using the form as an example is to break it into smaller pieces, give people an understanding of what they're actually getting into before they start the process. Because at a certain point, I think I started filling out the form and I was like, I ejected because it was too much. I'm like, man, I don't have time to do this whole thing right now. And that's really what it was. It just boiled down to not enough time, but I felt overwhelmed because there was just a lot of stuff, right? And do I think the information was good? Yeah. Do I want to give it to you? Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going to be on the outside of it. I don't know if you're going to use that information to pre-qualify me to be a guest on your podcast or do these sessions. I don't know why I'm giving you that information. So that's another thing, is giving people the right amount of context. Now, you can do all that without having a beautiful design, right? But then
Right.
when you add in a layer of using the right white space and making sure that things are centered and there's cleanly, it's kind of clean around the page, and I know exactly where to focus my eyes, that fonts are easy to read, the text fields are nice and large and easy for me to fill out. I have eyesight problems, so contrast is really important to me. Being able to read things is extremely important. So don't ever, especially in digital, I'll just tell you, don't ever use a font lower than 14 pixels for anything, right?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
you know,
Yeah.
I think some other stuff to consider is the F layout. So if you're designing for a primarily American audience, which I think 90% of us are on this call, or whoever's listening to this, there's something called the F model. And if you think about a web page, I'm trying to draw this, but I can't. Anyway, you read as Americans and English readers, we read from top to bottom and left to right. Right. So the most important thing on your page is going to be in the upper left hand corner, because that's where our eyes are always going to start. And then we go right, and then we go to the next line. Then we go right, and then we go to the next line. Right. It's how we read. But if you think about it in an F shape, just visualize looking at a website and put an F on the screen. As you move down the page, that bottom left-hand corner, things get lower and lower and lower in priority, right? And because it's just getting smaller, you can just think of it as like a funnel. Everything's getting smaller and smaller towards the end. So if you are building something, a great tip is to put the most important information at the top and work your way down to the least important information. If you're doing something like a form, keep it simple and break it into multiple steps. If you do that, let people know how many steps there are, right? That way they know what they're getting into. Don't make a 20-page process and then not tell them that there's 20 steps they need to go through, because when they get to step 10, they're going to be like, how much more is there? Right. So keep it simple, keep it focused. Another thing that I want to talk about real quick, because it's related to this, is when you have a bunch of different competing offers, like
Right.
on your website, right?
Right.
Try
This
to
is good.
try to package all those things up and simplify your offerings. It's okay to offer one, two, three things, have a lower value product, a higher value product, and then the one that you want people to buy in the middle. That's a very common practice. It works really well from a marketing standpoint, right? So you
Right.
put the lower price, the higher price, and you put the sweet spot right in the middle. People are more likely to buy because of
Right.
that. Movie theaters do it all the time with popcorn,
Yes.
right? It's like a thing. So um, there's a cognitive bias associated with that. I can't remember what it's called, but that's why we do that. Like, that's why our brains buy the one in the middle. Now, what I'm getting at though is, if you have an offer that's confusing and there's a bunch going on and then it like tears down and it's hard to understand, well, what am I getting out of this package? Think about that when you're putting an offer together, how to simplify it. And the last thing I want to talk about on the offer space is, we use social media as the example earlier. I'm going to sell you, most social media companies or marketing agents say, oh, we're going to do an SEO audit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can I use the F bomb?
Go for it.
What the fuck is an SEO audit? Like, if you are not in that business, you're a small business owner, you don't know, right? It's not something you're very. So what I'm trying to coach people on right now is, don't tell me what it is. Like, don't give me the name of the thing you're doing for me. Give me the result. So as an SEO person, somebody with a little SEO background, I was once, certified on Google and things like that many years ago.
Right.
But what I'm really doing there is, I'm going to tell you what you need to do to improve your SEO. That's why I'm doing the audit in the first place. That's
Right.
what you should put in your package. I'm going, strategies for improving your SEO placement, whatever that might be. So give people the output, give people the impact that you're going to create for them versus the name of whatever it is. Another good example of this is, I'm going to do a social media presence analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Like, I'm going to audit your social media presence, but why do I need you to do that?
Right.
Why is that important to me as a customer? So
Right.
instead of saying something like that, you're going to be saying, I'm going to, and it's actually fine to start. I'm going to provide a social media presence analysis that's going to do X, Y, and Z for your business.
Right.
That is what I'm buying. I'm not buying the name of what it is. I'm buying the result.
The result. Yeah. And I heard somebody said just was it Wednesday during our networking group, that you're either gonna get time or you're gonna get money, or both, right? And if it's not gonna give you more time, or it's not gonna give you more money, or both, then is it really gonna be worth your business, your time in business to do it, right?
Right,
So
right.
yeah, and now you mentioned something too, because something that really strikes me about what you're saying is, especially with forms, because generally forms are the entry place for all interactions when it comes down to voluntary input, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or what I call self-selection.
Yeah,
Like, the first thing we want to do is make it easy for you to self-select,
yeah,
right?
100%.
Because one thing, now you tie that to the offer. It's one thing for me to say that I'm going to give you this X number thing, but if I make cause too much friction in the beginning for you to take advantage of that offering, I've
Right.
already negated what my primary objective should be, which is
Mm-hmm.
to save you time
Mm-hmm.
and money, right? And
Yes.
I want to
Yes.
make sure that is my MO. And you're chin checking me right now. You don't even know it, but I want that to be my MO all the way from the beginning, all the way to the end. It's like, I've saved you by you giving me your time. I'm going to give you a desired outcome with the least amount of friction between beginning and delivery, right? Or what I call from the traffic stage all the way through the delivery stage. So I have them all numbered in 6 systems. So traffic capture, presentation, closing or making the sale, delivering on what you promised, and then your follow-up or retargeting. So or follow-up is all in the 6 steps. So if I make it heavy friction at the capture stage, while I'm capturing information, I'm setting the precedence, or I'm informing you that this is going to be tedious, and therefore it's going to probably make you less reticent to finish the thing. We talked about the process abandonment earlier, and not completing a thing as being one of the main pillars you should be trying to accomplish when you come down to designing your UX. Right. And if I make it too much friction, like you gave the illustration about my form to get on the podcast, then I've already started a process or started to engender that this is going to be tedious. Right.
Right.
The good thing, we go to networking meetings, multiple times a week together. So you understand that I'm a pretty cool dude, and that is not going to be as much friction as I'm making it seem. So,
well, those are your words, not mine.
Yeah, hey, as much as I can teach, I can learn. I don't get better as a teacher unless I'm taking the time to learn. And you was coming with haymakers, so so I'm gonna acknowledge that. But you're not saying nothing that I don't know, especially with my background. I should know better, right? But I tell you that crossing over into the marketing space, marketers and marketing. There's always this ever-present sense of rush now and to figure it out later, right? You hear the term done is better than perfect, because perfect is never done, right? And my inner designer in me goes, yeah, not with that statement, but I understand the sentiment, right? Get the MVP done, get the minimum viable product done, right? Get the littlest amount done to get out to market, to make money, so that you can then implement and come back. But a lot of times people don't come back to patch up the holes, right? They don't, and they end up leaving these incomplete designs, incomplete thoughts out in the market, and then they're counting on people to push through that friction that you created for them, so that they can so that you can get them to do what you want them to do, without considering what they have to do to even take advantage of your offer. So in real time, I'm mentally masticating, which means I'm mentally chewing this up in my mind, and I'm putting it in real time, and everything in me wants to go to my podcast form and break that down into cards, as opposed to just a long form. And I have the ability to do so. I just didn't do it. And that's exactly the illustration of what I'm saying. As a marketer, I wanted to hurry up and get something done so I can get it out, to get the process rolling, abandon all these other principles of design, so that I can get to a place where something is actually done. How do you I guess we could talk a little bit about what we call in the software world, like the definition of done. What's the definition of done, and what that means? Because you mentioned some big chunky parts of UX design and overall conversion, like how UX, or in other words, user experience, leads to conversion and profit, money made, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and talk a little bit about like the whole definition of done. How do you know, like, what are some things? And I'm gonna preface it with this. The other day, when you put out your announcement for the Asking Me Anything for yesterday, right? When you put together, I saw the layout that you created for the announcement, and simple as it is, I don't know if you have it anywhere, that design somewhere.
I do.
Do you mind sharing that on screen?
No, I can do that. One second.
Yeah, because it was instantly, I saw that and I was instantly gravitated to it. Simple, right? But there's some psychology behind it, right? There's some psychology behind why that was instantly recognizable and attractive, right? And I want to see if I can get Justin to talk a little bit about that, and maybe there's some more thought behind it than other just a haphazard, like, oh, I just put this together and it worked. Maybe there's some deeper understanding, or some gleaning we can get from this design.
Of course. So Figma is being a little bit slow right now, so it may take a second for it to load.
Can you
But
while that's loading, can you tell people
yeah,
what Figma is and how does
yeah.
Figma different from say Illustrator or different from Canva?
Oh man. Well, so Figma is a design tool. It's primarily used today for user interface design. So we use it to design screens for websites, applications, and we can prototype with it. And also on the back side, once I lay everything out, it has a dev feature where we turn on dev mode, and developers can go in and actually grab the codes for the components that we've designed as designers, and they can take that and pull that into whatever frameworks they're using to build the product. And so it's kind of a really seamless handoff, and it generates um, pretty good language from a code perspective to help folks do that. So I've been using Figma, and it's up now, so I'll start sharing my screen here. I've been using Figma since it came out back in 2016. I became a real advocate and a champion for it probably in the last handful of years because I've rolled it out to two global organizations for design teams. So part of my intro is, talking about some of the big teams that I've worked for and stuff, but part of that is being able to scale those teams, give them the tools that they need to be able to do the work that they need to do. Right. So what I love about Figma is it's collaborative. I can share this link with you right here, and you can pop in and you don't need an account. You can pop in and leave comments for me. Well, actually, you need an account to leave a comment, but it's free, right, for that part.
Right.
We can collaborate real time. So if I had another designer on my team, I could say, hey, I want you to go work on the banner for next Thursday. I'm going to work on banner for this Thursday, or I'm going to work on a presentation template for you, and we're going to work on different slides. So it's super collaborative. But what you were talking about seeing is this guy right here. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So so there's a lot of thought that goes into this, right? So at the highest level, the layout is the most important thing. So what I want people to see first is that there's a free office hours for small business. We talked about earlier, left to right, top down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody might glance the logo, but it's lower priority for me than the word free. I also made free the biggest, boldest color on there, right? The pink. And there's a reason for that. It's because I want it to attract. And red call to actions have a tendency to convert at higher rates than any other color call to action. Now it depends on your brand, and it depends on the thing, who your audience is and what you're trying to convert on. But red typically is really great for conversions. There's a psychology behind it. It creates urgency. It's a warning. It's a very attractive to the eye. It's a big, bright, bold color that stands on the screen. Now this is a little bit of a pink. The hue that I'm using here is not quite red, but it's right there in that vein, and it still matches my brand, which are colors of like nebulas and space kind of events, right? Planets. So
Black
I'm
hole.
trying to,
Right.
yeah, black hole. I'm trying to bring all these elements together. And that's why you've got kind of the starry background. And I really want to drive that home. So what I'm doing now is putting that starry background on everything. And then I'm putting those nebula kind of colors in the background to really show that this is like a space theme that I'm trying to go after. The second most important information on the screen is Thursdays at 10. When is this happening? I already know what it is. It's free small business hours, and it's Thursday at 10. So what I've done is I've created white space, negative space around this. That's why there's a gap here. And I put it in the other corner. So you see the layout of this thing is kind of diagonal. You start with free, you kind of go through this content, and then you end down here because we read left to right, top down, right? So that's why I put this stuff here. The third most important information is kind of the details, right? A community group where people can come and ask questions. That's why they're going to kind of come and do this thing. And so I put that in the middle. It's kind of the meat. It's not as important as the call out and kind of the date, but it's still information that people want to have, right? And then finally, the design services down here. This is just giving people a little bit extra to understand what are the types of things that this business does. What are some ideas that I might want to come to the conversation with? But it's also a deconstruction of my social media header, which isn't on this page, which is basically another call to action very similar to this, or not a call to action, but another label very similar to this. And then my services are much larger below it. And so what that does is it started to bring all those brand components. And what I'm doing is I'm creating brand consistency, which generates trust, loyalty, creates a authoritative voice for you, and really starts to generate some brand equity, right? Which is what we're all after from a brand perspective, is that equity piece. So that's why I chose the layout that I chose, the flow of how I chose. The other thing you'll notice is I didn't expand this all the way out to the edges, right? If I were
Right.
to grab this section here, our tendency from a layout perspective, ooh, it's laggy, would be to kind of left justify something and have tighter margins. You might see a lot of ads kind of look like this.
Right.
The reason I didn't do that, and the reason I put it where I did, was because, whoops, Facebook automatically resizes things. So if you're on
That's a
mobile,
good
it's going
point.
to shrink it down. And
Yeah.
so what it's going to do is cut off these edges, and my content is still going to show. And it's not going to like cut it off, because sometimes it may, like, if I grab the corner of this, see how the words are starting to get cut off. And that's what
Yeah.
Facebook will do, is it just shrinks the image. It's not taking anything away, but because of how their system works, it's going to, resize things. And I want to make sure that the content's still readable. So those are some of the reasons why I did what I did. So you
Yeah.
can see there's a lot of thought. It's
There's
not
a
just
lot of
putting
thought.
words on there. Yeah.
Right. And the thing, and the immediate thing, when I see this, I get energy from this
Mm,
design, as opposed to having to exert energy to understand it.
right.
Does that make
Exactly.
sense? Like
100%.
I look at this and I go, oh, that's inviting.
Mm,
That's what is this? As opposed to other design considerations that will cost me energy.
yep.
To It would cost me a more energy than what I'm going to get from it. Right. I
It's
see
a
this.
really great way to look at it.
I see the negative space around, or the border around it. I see how it's like the free office hours for small businesses is in big font up at top. It says taking prominence, and then the immediate thing I see next is the date, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Right, and then all the other little accoutrements that go along with it that help answer the other surrounding questions around,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so who is it, what are they talking about, like all of that's there, but the main thing is the main thing. And
Yep.
I'm going right there, and it's going, oh, I feel good. I feel good. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I want to take action on this. This looks like that, what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
It energizes, right, as opposed to sucks energy away. Now, I know we talked about the golden ratio, right? Which is any of the golden ratio? Can you explain the golden ratio, and if any of that's being utilized here? And one other thing I will say about this is that this whole design is all text.
Yep.
There's no images.
Right.
Like the text and the way that the text is designed it creates an image.
Mm-hmm.
So that, in my mind, from my past in my graphic design days, indicates to me there may be some golden ratio rules, the golden rule applied here. And if so, can you confirm that? And can you talk about what that golden ratio is?
I hate to disappoint you.
Before you go there, I want to just make sure I'm reiterating. All this is for the purpose of conversion, right?
Yep.
All this is for the purpose of getting somebody to take action,
Right.
to turn their and to create curiosity. And then the systems that I build out then take that curiosity, turn them into credit card swipes. Right.
Right.
It's all about reducing the friction between the time, or the energy. It's the energy you give or you require in order for somebody to get that curiosity to a credit card swipe. Now, golden ratio, I believe, is the castor oil that helps get people from curiosity from curiosity down through credit card swipes, right? And so go ahead and talk about golden ratio, and if you actually used that golden ratio here in this design.
I really hate to disappoint you, because I love your enthusiasm for this particular topic. I did not use the golden ratio to design this. Like, okay, let me rephrase that. I didn't take the golden ratio, put it here, and then lay things out. Now, I've been doing
Right,
design for so long that
right.
using the idea of thirds is something that, photographers use, a lot of visual designers, graphic designers, they use this idea of thirds, which means break things into thirds. So I'm using the middle third of the page, right? And then
Yeah.
I've got, if you think about, I've got part of it up here, I've got part of it down here, and you break it into 3 sections. I'm using kind of that middle third. Now it's not exact, and I think that that's the thing about the golden ratio, is that if you use it consistently in everything, then you're going to have consistent results from a layout perspective. And that's perfectly okay. There are some things I would use the golden ratio for, which would be like logo design and things like that. So for those of you that don't know, let me just pull this up real quick. And I'm not a teacher on this by any stretch. And I think what's even more appropriate than the golden ratio is using the here. Let me just pull this up. Is the what's called the woof, boy, the Fibonacci sequence is really what
There you
we're
go.
referring to, right?
That's it.
So let me grab this. And there's, if you do a Google search on the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio, you're going to find this. But the idea is that the ratio that you're trying to interpret is like 1.6, I think, or something like that. I don't know off
Something
the
like
top of
that.
my head.
Yeah, like 1 point. Yeah,
1.618, right?
yeah,
And
that's
so
it.
this is the math. So you take this section and you divide it in half. And you take this section and you divide it in half. So there'd be a box here. And then you take that section and you divide it in half. And so what you're seeing is box one, and then box two, and then you cut that in half, and you've got these 2 sections, and you cut that in half, and you just go down and down and down and down. And that's what creates this really beautiful equal circle. And this is where that balance comes from. So when you think in terms of laying that out from a design perspective, you can put things in different places. You can flip this thing upside down and around. It gives you an idea. Now you can start seeing that logos are designed using the Fibonacci sequence, the Twitter circles. The circle here, the size of the circle that fits in that box is the size of the head. And then they use multiple versions of that to kind of build out the wing. It shows up everywhere in nature, which I think is what people like. They just are really blown away by it. Like you can lay the Fibonacci sequence over the hurricane and it like lays out really nicely. This old artwork, same thing. The Mona Lisa. They say that you can put the golden circle on like the most attractive people's faces and it's almost perfect.
And perfect. Yes, exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Here's the Apple logo, which I don't know if people really knew this. I love this about the Apple logo, but the thought here is that this is a bite taken out of the apple. And so what the designer did is he took the bite and he put it right at the top, and that's the leaf of the Apple logo. I just thought that was a really clever use of the bite out of the apple.
Yeah, that is.
But as you can see, they've overlaid in pink here that Fibonacci sequence. And you can see that that ratio aligns through the whole design in different pieces of it. Architecture uses, this is from one of the old Greek something or others, and they've just used that balance to build things, and this is throughout history. So it's a really important concept to leverage. I'm by no stretch of the imagination an expert in this in any way. When photographers are taking pictures, I think that's really what this is boiling down to, is making sure that you're using the correct proportions and aligning your photo and things of that nature. But it's really important concept to use, but it takes a little bit to kind of play with and master, I guess, over time. But it's not something you have to know. It's to be a good graphic designer. It's not a process that you need to apply all the time. At the end of the day, good graphic design does what? It gets results. So whether you
Right.
use the Fibonacci sequence or not, if you're making money, keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You might be able to apply this and make it better,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
and
So that's it.
I really believe that understanding that. So a lot of times people when they're creating uh going back to creating when they're creating an offer, they're creating a digital product, something that's they want to generate, they get stuck on what should I do? Well, there are rules out there that will help you get started, right? So like going back to this design right here,
Oh, sorry.
um yeah, going back to your design for the invite, I noticed that if you have well established rules, when you break a rule, it creates an emphasis. Now,
Yes.
so I know this is really techie, like heady stuff, and we're probably both very much nerds. Um,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, um, we understand that these are things that move the needle.
Yeah.
When these are things that move the needle when it comes down to um, when it comes down to what design it can do and should be doing, right?
Yeah.
And
100%.
at the end of the day, we may not always acknowledge it or live with it, like or live with it in our conscience, but it does live rent free in our heads. Like Justin was saying a minute ago, like I've been doing design so long that it's possible that I might have implemented the golden ratio and didn't realize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a matter of practice over time,
Yep.
right? Anything that looks aesthetically pleasing generally has to do with balance,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's
Balance.
always the ebb and flow. Nature and the world that we live in is all about ebbs and flows, gives and takes. That's what keeps everything rolling in the way that it does. And when you're creating the front end for any offer, right, you need to understand these principles so that you can move people from the very beginning from the traffic portion, what I call the system one is the traffic attraction. I want to move, right? There is a science behind that, right? And some people get frustrated because they're like, well, I don't know how to make it move. Well, there are design principles that you can lean on. There are things you can lean on to help you get started in a way to make people move, right? And he talked about color, talked about composition, talked about we talked about the golden ratio. We talked about Fibonacci, which golden ratio and Fibonacci are interchangeable terms in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
So all those are moving people to want to take action. So with that being said, I kind of want to bring it on home, right? I want to kind of bring it on home.
Let's do it.
And what at the end of the day, over here at the Traffic Link, I focus on creating products, creating situations that convert people from curiosity to credit card swipes, right?
Yep.
And a whole plethora of systems that go into building that. And I have those systems breaking down into 6 major blocks. If you ever have an issue with why things are not converting, it's generally a lot of people are stuck on this part right here, which I call the traffic step, right? Or what I call the attraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not attracting people, right? Wrong design, wrong color. It looks trash. It doesn't look inviting. It isn't saying, bring me in, right? And that's why I wanted to, really talk about today with Justin, is because he has that experience and coming from a UX, UI place, then he's able to talk about it in a real and dealing with major brands, talking about it in a real way. These are things that people that are big brain people are thinking about to get you to take action, right? There's a reason why when an app drops, they use certain colors. There's certain things that happens. There's a reason why they use certain ways to collect information. And that's all important. So I want to encourage you guys that there are ways to start doing better with that first system, which is the attraction/traffic system, right? And then once you get them through that portion of that part of things, then you can move them into the capture. And like you said, you want the capture to be as frictionless as the promise that you made when you showed good design, right? Which I didn't do. We're gonna get on that just because he gave me a 1-2 combo on my podcast intake form. So we're gonna get that together. But any last words? Got to take about next maybe 5 minutes or so. Justin, any last words
Sure.
that you can help talk about? Some other things I want to talk about in the near future are I want to talk about. I want to come back and talk about the differences in marketing, right? Because everybody thinks marketing is the same thing, but it's not. But I want you to go ahead and wrap up on this design piece, form over function, color, composition, Fibonacci, golden ratio, anything you can wrap up in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. So I think the most important takeaway that I want to give to small businesses and people that are trying to do design and put products out or services out to people, to customers, is that I'm not, my design aesthetic was designed for me because I had this idea of creating BlkHol as a design studio. I like that space sci-fi theme. I'm a mega nerd, right? And I like that. And I wanted to figure out a way to make that something that's usable, that's actionable, that feels energetic towards my potential customers, clients, followers, the people who are going to like my content and my page. Exactly
Mhm.
the things that Xavier said, that that you said you appreciated about the design. That's why I approached it the way I did. So the takeaway there is not do really good design for Justin. It's do really good design for Xavier. Do really good design for your customers. If you are not designing for your customers first, you're going to lose. Don't do it for you. Don't do one of the other mantras of user experience that I like to. I'm going to use a word here. Preach. I like to preach this because I think it's super important. You are not your user. You are just a person. You're an owner. You're a stakeholder, but you are
Acts.
not the user, right?
Yes.
So understand who those people are, design for them, ask them for the feedback. And don't just put a logo out and say, hey, which logo do you like better? That's not user feedback. If you need tips on user feedback, user research, reach out to me or Xavier and we'll help out. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is design for your customer, not for you. Make it easy for them. That's the most important thing. Xavier, thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. There are so many things, my brain is going to explode because there's so many new things I want to talk about with you and unpack and go
Yes.
down different rabbit holes. So I'm hoping we get to do it again. And
Absolutely.
just want to say thanks again for having me this morning. It's been awesome.
All right. And where can they find you if they're looking for you?
I appreciate it. So you can find me on Facebook at BlkHol Design Studio, BlkHol. I spelled it really funky because I didn't design it for my customers, but I needed to stand out, so it gives me a little bit of differentiation. Also, I've got a website that I'm building. It'll be live soon. It's BlkHolDesign.com. And I've got a Discord server as well. Feel free to join over there. It's BlkHol Design Studio. So looking forward to seeing you all in space.
Absolutely. And that's BlkHol. So look up, keep Justin in front of mind when it comes down to advice, tips on design. I call it the front end of everybody's funnel. The front end of everybody's process is attraction. So,
Yeah.
Justin, thank you very much. We're gonna have to double back and run it back because there's
Let's do it.
I just many ideas you have, I have.
Let's do
So
it. I'm
yeah.
excited.
All right, man. Well, you guys have a good one. This has been the Traffic Link, Xavier, the Traffic Link. I appreciate you guys for joining me today. And we're out.
Cheers.